You clicked on this video because you want to learn more about what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. Maybe you've seen it on Critical Role. Maybe you've seen it over on Up Up Down Down in Roll Out. Either way, this is the video and the series for you. This is Master the Game. I am Juice. Let's get started. Make sure you head on over to rpgjuice.com, where you can get caught up on the latest videos, the latest news, and blog posts from Juice himself. So you're here because you want to learn more about Dungeons and Dragons. Well, this series is going to cover the ins and outs of the rules, as well as just what Dungeons and Dragons is. And our hope is that by the end of this series, you will have a firm understanding of how to play and anything you need to know to get a group going and just go out and play. One of the main things about Dungeons and Dragons is that there is no limitation to what you can do. Now, in the book itself, they even tell you the rules are secondary to having fun. It's all about the story and playing and having a good time with people you know. And if you don't know anybody yet who plays Dungeons and Dragons, don't worry. You can play with complete strangers, and after a campaign or a few sessions, you will start to form bonds and friendships. So what is Dungeons and Dragons? Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop RPG in which you and a group of your friends sit around a table with one other person called a Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master is going to be the adjudicator of the rules and the story. The players are going to all have their own character, and what you're going to do is you're going to play a game of fantasy with high magic. You can tweak things in your own personal games to have less magic and things like that, but that's not the point. The point is you're going to be playing a fantasy setting where you and your fellow players play different roles. You might have a fighter, a wizard, you might have a cleric, and you might have a rogue. Those are the basic classes, and there are more classes as well. The basic classes kind of cover your main party roles. So your fighter is more of your frontline person who's going to be using weapons to take down their foes. Your rogue is going to be stealthy. They're going to be the type of character that will steal information or keys from the bad guys to help free, innocent people. They're going to help you get into chests and help you get through doors that might be locked to further your agenda. Your cleric tends to be the religious party member who tends to do a lot of healing. They don't have to do that. In fact, none of these characters need to stick to a role. They can use their abilities however they want. But the cleric tends to be a healer. They will heal the party when they're down. Later on in levels, they may even get a spell that allows them to bring people back from the dead. So they can be very useful. Then you have the wizard. The wizard is your spellcaster. They read books, they study. They're usually the smartest person in the group, and they can cast spells, all sorts of different spells, utility spells, combat spells, defensive spells. Again, very useful character. Now, the one thing to remember, no matter how somebody wants to play their character, it is their character. If they don't want to give up something to come heal another character as a cleric, for example, they don't have to. Remember, it's about the story. It's not about winning. Dungeons and Dragons is a game that's collaborative storytelling. So if you're playing it to win, then you're doing it all wrong. So again, let people play the character that they have however they want. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make suggestions here and there, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't have expectations. But again, if somebody is reasonably playing their character how they want, it shouldn't be a big deal. Maybe your cleric wants to go up to the front line and fight just like your fighter. Clerics can do that. They're actually really potent in combat. That's one of the great things about them. Maybe your wizard does not want big blaster spells and they have more utility spells. That's okay, it's their character. Maybe your rogue likes being the rogue for the combat advantages and isn't about the picking locks and being stealthy. So maybe they just want to be able to flank and use advantage to their advantage. And that's the part they think is fun about it. Maybe your fighter is more of a diplomat than they are an actual fighter. Maybe swords and weapons are their last resort. So again, however people want to play their character, let them play it that way. Now that I kind of got that out of the way, you'll see in a lot of games people will talk in voices and things like that. Whatever you're comfortable doing is what you should do. If you like talking in third person, that's perfectly fine. And what I've found over the years, and this is just my quick little tip here, is that as long as you're trying your best, then everybody will appreciate it. It's the people who aren't fully focused and are easily distracted by their phones and things like that. Those are the people you got to worry about. So if you're paying attention to what your DM is saying, what the other players are saying, and you're actively engaged in what is going on, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Now, some of the basics of the rules. So Dungeons and Dragons uses multiple dice. The primary die that you're going to use is a 20-sided die, also known as a D20. You're going to roll that to hit. You're going to roll that for all your skills. You're going to roll it for all your saving throws. So the D20 is your most used die type in Dungeons and Dragons. Now there's a very key mechanic, and it's called advantage and disadvantage. It's new to 5th edition. It's not something they used in previous editions. And when rolling advantage, for example, you're going to roll 2d20 and take the highest roll. When you're rolling with disadvantage, you're going to roll 2d20 and take the lowest roll. Now, the beautiful thing about this mechanic is that it allows for gameplay to be a lot quicker. You don't have to remember a lot of modifiers like previous editions. And so that is something that I think makes Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition much better than previous editions. It's one of the big, big improvements. Now, another thing, if you're new to Dungeons & Dragons, it's not like other things where you need to get every edition. For example, if you're playing Mario Brothers, you play the first one, second one, third one. You don't need previous editions to play 5th edition. You don't need to know anything about them. 5th edition is a whole new rule set, and that's it. That's all you need to know. So if you're looking to get into Dungeons & Dragons, you don't need to get the older editions. Just get what you want to play, which, if you're watching these, is probably 5th edition. That's what they're playing on Critical Role. That's what they're playing over on Rollout. So again, stick to just 5th edition for the sake of this. Everything you're going to need to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is in the Players Handbook. So if you're in America and you're going to a store, it's about $50. If you're in Canada and you go to a game store, I believe it's $58. You can get it cheaper on Amazon. I'll post a link below to that. On Amazon, I've seen it as low as $20, and I've seen it up to like $35. So it just depends. But you can get it in various places. The Player's Handbook is all you're going to need if you're a player. If you're the one that's going to be the dungeon master, you're going to want to pick up the monster manual. That, I would say, is not necessarily required, but it has everything that you're going to need to know about monsters and how to create monsters in it. It doesn't tell you how to create monsters, but it'll give you a good baseline for making certain monsters into others. So what I would do sometimes is I'll take like a goblin and reskin it as something else, like a humanoid rat or something. And that way my players don't know it's a goblin, and so I can use the same stats and it doesn't feel like the same thing to the players. So you will definitely want a monster manual. So there's some things in there about layer actions and things like that. Another book you might want to consider picking up is the Dungeon Master Guide. The Dungeon Master Guide, I feel, can be very useful to somebody new to the hobby. It tells you how to set up the world setting. It tells you how to plan adventures. It has magic items. It has random tables for generating things if you're not good at improvising on the fly. So I would definitely recommend picking up the Dungeon Master Guide if you're new. Now, some other things about Dungeons and Dragons you're going to need to know. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to role play. And so when you're role playing, your Dungeon Master is going to describe the scene. And they're going to tell you what it is. So you walk down the slick stairs into the dungeon that has lighted up sconces and you can barely see down the dimly lit hall. What do you do? And the lead player might say, well, I cast light into the hallway to brighten it up. And then another player might say, like your rogue might say, I try to be stealthy and hide behind the character in front of me, and so on. Based on what the players say, the DM will react and tell you what happens. So when you get into combat, one of the things that's going to happen is your DM's going to ask you to roll initiative. And combat won't really start until something aggressive happens. Maybe a monster decides they're going to attack you. Maybe one of you as a player says, I run up and I want to attack. DM will say, all right, let's roll initiative. One of the first things the DM will decide is anybody surprised? Now, this isn't something that should happen a lot. It should only happen in very rare instances where one side is not aware of the other one. For instance, if you were hiding as an orc patrol came through, you might get the surprise round on the bad guys. So what happens then is you will all get to go first no matter what your initiative order is before the next round, which then you will just go in initiative order. So that's a neat little thing you can do. It's a nice tactical advantage that you can get. But it can happen to you too. In fact, it's one of my favorite tools as a DM. Just ask my players. They can't stand it. One of the things that my one player always tells new people is consider picking up the alert feat. Just a little thing for you right there. So after the surprise round and initiative order is decided, you will then go into your normal rounds and how initiative order works. And whoever rolls the highest will get to go first. You then get to decide what you do as an action. You get to decide what you do with your movement, which you can divide up in 5th edition D&D. And you can also do a bonus action and a reaction every turn. You get one of each, unless stated otherwise by an ability. Now, not everybody has a bonus action to do. For example, as a fighter first level, there's not really much you can do with the bonus action. You might get to do second wind, or you can do your action surge. Those are two big things that a fighter can do. Some spellcasters can have bonus action spells, such as if you're a cleric, you have spells like Healing Word, which you can cast as a bonus action. There's also things as reactions that characters can do. So spells, again, that would be reactionary, might be a defense spell. So if something tries to hit you, you can decide to do a reaction to not be hit. Same thing with some of the Battlemaster fighter abilities. So again, there's those 4 things, but just remember, if an ability does not explicitly tell you it can be used a certain way, then it can't. It has to say that it can be used as a bonus or a reaction for you to do that. Outside of combat, there's other ways to play the game. You also have social interactions. Some people refer to this as the role-playing part, but really you should be role-playing everything. So again, keep that in mind, but you'll hear people use the social interactions and role-play interchangeably. All that means is they want to have more character interaction with NPCs or maybe even other player characters. So there's that aspect. There are some skills associated with that. So you might, have some role playing, and a DM might say, I want you to roll for that. So maybe you're trying to persuade a guard to let your friend go who tried to take some gold and was caught but gave it back or something. Maybe you're trying to persuade the guard that, hey, he won't do it again. You might have to make a roll to convince the guard. That'll be up to your DM to decide, though. The other aspect to tabletop role-playing games is you have exploration. This would be things like traveling through woods or, any kind of terrain, cross-travel, crossing a desert or anything like that, where you might have to make survival checks to find different supplies. Like maybe you're running low on water, so you need to try to find a water source while you're out in the wilderness. Maybe you're running out of rations, so you need to look for food you can eat. So those might be some survival checks you would make. You also will have to plan out how if you're camping And sometimes, depending on your DM, you might have to decide, well, should we take a fire watch? Fire watch would be like somebody keeps an eye out while the others sleep and you alternate shifts. So you might have something like that happen. Part of exploration might be trying to find the secret entrance to a tomb in this massive forest. So your DM might make you roll perception checks and investigation checks and history checks and religion checks. All these things to try and find where this tomb is hidden. Those are the three main things. So you're going to have combat, you're going to have social interactions, and you're going to have exploration. Those are the three pillars as the Players Handbook tells you about. And the game is really centered around that. You're going to hear a lot of people talk mostly about the combat. And I think that's because that is what the focus usually is in most games. But if you have a good group, I think you'll find that while the combat can be really fun and exciting, and it actually is one of my favorite parts, you'll find that the collaborative storytelling and learning about the other characters in your group is just as exciting. Exploring the world, learning about the setting is also really exciting. Getting treasure, growing as a character, all these things are so much fun. And so if all of this stuff sounds like something you're interested in, then Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is for you. So as this series goes on, we're going to dive into these things more specifically. We're going to talk about the mechanics. We're going to talk about a lot of things involving 5th edition. There's going to be tips, throughout each video. And my hope for you is that you will watch all of them from start to finish, and you will take in, everything you can. Remember, the rules are secondary to the fun at your table. You're going to play with people who don't go by the rules. And that's okay. If you have a DM that doesn't want to roll for initiative every single time a new combat starts, that's fine. If they completely want to ignore the passive perception, that's fine. Again, just have fun. Tell the story together. And remember, the DM has final say in the rules. Don't argue with them. If you want to point out that, hey, the rule's actually this, that's okay. You can do that. But be prepared for them to say, I understand, but this is how I want to do it, and just let it be. Okay? Don't get so caught up in the rules that it ruins the fun for everybody. Nobody likes the person who's going to argue constantly with the DM. Okay? Now, as you play more, you're going to learn more about the styles you like and things like that. If you want to learn more about that, I did a video called Introduction to Tabletop RPGs. Go check that series out. We talk about more of the basics that aren't system specific, and I offer some tips in there on how to find styles that you like, how to find players, and various other things. If you're watching this for the first time, smash that subscribe button, make sure you hammer that like button, and leave me a comment below and tell me what you thought of this video. Tell me what brought you to Dungeons & Dragons and why you're interested in this series. Maybe there's some things that I can learn from you as well. This is Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.